Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast, helping you integrate sex, sexiness, sacredness, and science in your life and your bedroom. And now, your host, Dr. Stormy.
Hi, Dr. Stormy here. Thank you so much for being a listener or viewer for the Love Deep Lab podcast. We are still going to be coming at you with all things sex, science, and sacredness. And we're taking the pod on the road. We have collaborated with the amazing Toby Morrell from the Marriage Supply, which is a shop for couples to find different sex toys and lubes and all the fun things. Toby is just a great guy. He's a member of the band Emery. He has led men's retreats all over the country, and he's just an all-out hilarious Southern gentleman. So we are bringing you Sex 101, the adult sex ed you wish you had gotten. So all things about sex and sex education and sex positivity. So you can email your questions in anonymously, and we will answer them anonymously each week on each episode. So you can send that to info@lovedeeplab.com. That's info@lovedeeplab.com. Check out the 30-minute teaser below, and if you like it, the link in the bio to the full episode and the bi-weekly episodes. Thanks so much for tuning in.
All right, we're back with Sex 101. I'm excited. Our second episode. This is cool.
Yeah, let's do it.
The first one was so fun. I just, talking about sex is hard and no pun intended. And it's, I think folks sometimes don't know what to say, what to do, what to ask. And that's why this podcast is so awesome. We got some great listener questions this week. I mean, weren't you blown away?
Yes. I was totally actually tearfully moved by the vulnerability of people writing in and sharing not just at surface level, but diving right into the depths. And the magic is in the depths. So I was so moved and so touched, and really feels like it's an honored place to be.
Yeah, I know. We've been going over the questions, and we're like, well, man, they are being vulnerable and open and honest, and we're ready to rock and roll. So that's really cool. We want to take a second too. If you're new listening to the podcast, first of all, I run the website marriagesupply.com. We say it's the best sex toy site on earth, especially online. So you can go there, marriagesupply.com. You can use code all over and get 10% off. And I am Toby from the band Emery, and I've led men's small groups. I used to run a thing called the True Man Experience, and I've worked with men on all different levels. I've experienced so much just meeting people through the band and through these events. And so I've always thought I wish sex could be more open and honest and conversational. And, growing up as a very conservative Christian, I grew up a very conservative Christian. We didn't talk about sex, just said, don't do it until you get married and then it'll all work out. And that's not true. That is not true. No. If anybody says, well, just don't do it and then it'll be awesome, that has never worked. Just don't play baseball and then one day you'll be in the major leagues. That just
amazing. Yeah.
Not true. So, and then Stormy, reintroduce yourself a little bit.
Hi, you guys. I'm so excited to have everyone here listening and watching. I'm Dr. Stormy Hill, and I'm a certified sex and intimacy coach. And I coach men, women, and couples in all realms of intimacy with a focus on sexual intimacy as well as sacred sexuality. We also offer online courses, and we just launched a lube. And so just lots of fun things in the realm of sex and sexuality. Besides being a mama to an amazing young adult, 18-year-old with autism, this work is my greatest passion. And he likes to remind me that sex is not everyone's favorite subject to talk about, but it is mine. And so I love doing this work. And it's just really a pleasure to interact with you all and to hear your vulnerable questions. I'm so grateful for them.
All right. Well, let's get into it. We're going to start the show this week with I want to answer listener questions, and then I think we both want to also see if we can educate or learn something, and something that I did not know at all. I did not know this because I was making a joke on my podcast this week. You always hear big dick energy, but you never hear big vagina energy or and I was like, oh, could that be a thing? And so, because I was like, maybe a lady with a big vagina, maybe, she's walking around, she's confident. I don't know. That probably doesn't work the same way, but I was just thinking that in my mind. And so I did a little research, and I found this on the Pelvic PT. And Stormy, I'm sure you can elaborate on this too. Did you know that the clitoris is way larger than that little nub on the top of your lady parts? It's part of a larger system of erectile tissue. There are two shafts, the crura, C-R-U-R-A.
Yeah.
I'm saying that wrong.
No,
that are about 4 inches long that are under the labia and the inner and outer lips of that's the inner and outer lips of the vulva. And that's what plumps the lips up during arousal. But wait, there's more. The urethral and perineal, is that right? Perineal sponges at the top and bottom of the vagina are also erectile tissue. The former is upwards, also considered the G-spot area, and the latter is between the vaginal opening and the rectum. Because they encircle the vagina, penetrative sex can induce orgasm for some women. And then lastly, there's the extra fact here. I didn't know this. The clitoris is the only organ solely devoted to pleasure, and it has 8,000 nerve endings. That is crazy. The penis only has 4,000.
So I'm going to add to like the amazing clit facts because the clitoris is an amazing organ whose sole purpose is pleasure. Like that is so cool. And for those of you that are watching, I'm wearing my clitoris ring right now. Look at that. That's how magical it is. I'm going to take it off so you can see. But just like Toby explained, if you're just listening, that there is crura and there's cavernosa to the clitoris. So what you see, the little head that you see is just the glands of the clitoris, similar to the glands of the penis. And 85% of the clitoris is underneath, is inside the body. And so really, it's really an incredible organ that wasn't even anatomically represented correctly in medical textbooks until 2005 with magnetic resonance imaging with MRIs of the clitoris and stuff. So we're catching up, but there's a lot of clit shaming that is very much deep in our culture. And so I just found out through my research that this Clitoris Awareness Week in May. Woohoo!
Oh, wow.
Celebrate.
In May. All right.
Celebrate the clitoris for a whole week. So that is pretty awesome. And yeah, I think you just mentioned, Toby, that in just the head of the clitoris, there's 8,000 nerve endings, which is more than double the nerve endings in the whole penis, right? And it's not a competition, but it's just kind of an interesting thing as to how sensitive the clitoris is, which also some of you women, some of you vagina owners out there who are listening might say, my clitoris is too sensitive. And that we'll kind of get into that a little bit here in a minute, but that can be a thing, right? It can feel, because it has got so many nerve endings, it can be overly sensitive. And then there's ways to work with that. But just like you said, Toby, it engorges and swells similar, like by 300%. It's erectile tissue, just like the penis, similar to the penis in that way.
And does that mean it can kind of get a little harder, right? Like, can it kind of become erect?
Yeah, absolutely. It engorges. It's also kind of interesting. The one part of our body, for all you vagina owners out there, that doesn't age. It doesn't age. A 20-year-old clitoris acts the exact same as a 70-year-old clitoris. So we got that going for us too. So
the penis definitely ages. The penis definitely ages. It gets older for sure.
And then listen to this. I found this because I love research. I said that in medieval times, the clitoris was called the devil's teat because it is so magical that it was like to entice men into like bad things. I'm not sure what those bad things are, but that's what it was called in medieval times, was the devil's teat.
Wow. That's probably what they call it in the church I grew up in. Now, I wanted to ask you another question, just going back to what you said a minute ago. So sometimes when you say that the clitoris can feel just too sensitive, does that mean it's just too much? When you say that, that means it's not pleasurable sometimes if you overstimulate it or stimulate it too much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies from, clitoris to clitoris, but I think what happens for a lot of clitoris owners is that it's like too direct, too fast, right? So because it's erectile tissue and because it engorges and as it gets aroused, and that spongy tissue that you mentioned as well, the more aroused a vagina owner is, what a vagina is, the more the clitoris will like be receptive to pleasure. And so it can be like too much too fast, or it can be too direct before there's enough level of arousal. And then some clitoris owners just don't like direct stimulation. It's too intense. And so that's, again, another place you're going to hear this throughout our podcast about communicating with your partner. Does that feel good? Like, listen to asking them, how does it feel when I touch your clitoris? How does that feel? Do you like that? Do you want lube? Do you not want lube? Because that's going to change the amount of friction. So, it's really, but it's an incredible organ whose literally sole purpose is pleasure. And that's pretty amazing and pretty unique. So,
yeah, 100%. And I guess my next question would be, to stimulate the clitoris, should you never start with the clitoris? Like, is it that in order to get it started being stimulated or engorged, is it, you shouldn't just go straight to it, right? Like, should you start with other foreplay before, or some people just get right to it?
I think it depends on your erotic language. Some people are like, let's just get right to it. They're sexual as far as like erotic, languages, erotic blueprints and such. But I think a good rule of thumb is that, I always talk with my clients about tripling the length of your foreplay. We tend to go right to what we know works. And for a lot of women, they know that their clitoris is an essential component of orgasm. But during, when you're exploring with your partner to play around, play in other parts, have a makeout session, dry hump, all these amazing things that really build arousal and desire. And then your clitoris is more receptive to deeper pleasure, right? And for many vagina owners, the clitoris is an essential key to orgasm, to climax. And so, it's a great place to communicate with your partner. I think it's also, again, the magic that what you see, the little clitoris that you see, is just the head, just literally the tip of the clitoris. That the clitoris is actually all throughout the labia of the vagina owner. And so that there's so much other ways to stimulate the clitoris without direct stimulation of the head of the clitoris.
Yeah. And is it true that most guys just don't know where it's at?
I mean, that joke makes me so sad because as a sex and intimacy coach, but you're right. The joke is, what's the difference between a clitoris and Alaska? Most guys know where Alaska is. But that joke breaks my heart because I don't think that's actually true. But so, let's just talk about it, right? So where the head of the clitoris is right there up at the top under a little hood, right where the labia meet. But then knowing that there's a whole network of tissue underneath, inside, that actually as the woman gets closer to climax, it sort of gives like the vagina a hug. And it's one of the reasons why it's also involved in G-spot orgasm rather than just direct clitoral stimulation as well.
And then, okay, last question I have on the clitoris. I was always told you're supposed to when you're going down on your lady, you're supposed to spell out the alphabet, or it. Is that true? Like, if you just moved in one movement, like just a circle or up and down, is that work, or is it better to mix it up and go from, all different angles and directions?
Great question. So, I mean, anatomically, right? I mean, I think if you know one clitoris, you know one clitoris. Like, it's really about finding out with your partner or partners, like, how sensitive is their clitoris? Is there a part of their clitoris? There typically is. Like, if you think of the head of the clitoris as the face of a clock, right? That's the whole alphabet thing, that you're hitting all the parts of the head of the clitoris, the glands of the clitoris. There's usually a part of the face of that clock, clitoris clock, we'll call it, that's more sensitive, that feels really good, or might feel too sensitive. we might have just coined a term right there. But and so again, listening to your partner's cues, listening to their breath, their moans, their groans, listening to direct feedback is a really great way to approach that. And then also remembering that you don't just have a tongue, you have lips and fingers and all these other parts that can be involved in really giving fabulous oral sex. All the parts of the clitoris, as well as other parts of the vulva and vagina. And
then there's the big debate, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this a bunch on the podcast in future episodes, but there is like the penetrative orgasm and the clitoral orgasm. And it seems to me, from what I've read, that the clitoral orgasm is more common or prevalent. Is that true?
So that leads us right into our myth. It's really amazing, like little segue. So our myth that we're going to debunk today is that the myth is that most women orgasm from penetration alone. Okay, so we're talking about penis and vagina intercourse, or what we call unassisted intercourse. And that is a myth. Actually, it depends on which study you're reading, but kind of summarizing them, only 25% of women climax from penetration alone, meaning 75% do not. They need what we call
that's a big number.
It's a huge number. It's a huge number. And for all of you vagina owners out there, like, I want you to know, if you don't climax from penetration alone, you're in the vast majority. You're in the majority. And if you do, great. Some women do, right? 25% of women, according to these studies, do. But that, to your point, Toby, that's suggesting, that's showing us that the clitoris is such an important part that doesn't often get direct enough stimulation to bring a woman to orgasm or to climax with penetrative sex alone. So the importance of foreplay, the importance of playing with different positions. There are penetrative sex positions that will stimulate the clitoris more than others. Using toys, right? Go to Marriage Supply, check out a toy that like helps with clitoral stimulation. There's so many ways to bring the clitoris in to really increase and enhance pleasure.
Yeah. Since we've been doing this podcast, I've been, trying to do more research because I want to keep up with you because you know so much. But I have found just from reading that folks are saying, because the missionary position has gotten kind of a bad rap. It's vanilla, it's boring, don't do the missionary position. But it seems to be that the man's pelvic bone, while he's penetrating a woman, can actually help stimulate the clitoris a lot. And actually, that's a great position for clitoral orgasming. Right.
Amazing. Yeah. We call that the clitoral alignment technique, but it's exactly what you're talking about. So it's take missionary, move the penis owner up, the man up a little farther so that his pelvic bone is against your mons of your vulva. And then you'll actually get more direct clitoral stimulation. So that's a really great position. That's sort of like an adaptation of missionary. There's, again, to the point, there's so many ways to play with alignment in different positions that can stimulate the clitoris more.
Yeah. And I think one of the big key things to remember is I think oftentimes men, at least from my experience, working with men, talking to men, they really do want to pleasure their partner. They want their partner to have, it feels so amazing if, they orgasm or they feel so good and sex was awesome. But just like I was saying earlier, like I was taught, just don't have sex and then one day it'll be amazing. You have to take it slow and learn and laugh and cut up a little bit and try some things. Like it might not be, you might have to during sex practice some moves to see what actually is working. And it might not seem in the moment so romantic or hot and heavy, but if you can go slow and kind of learn what each other's like, then later times that you're having sex, I think it will be a lot better.
Totally. And I so appreciate you saying that. Like, why do we think what maybe it was culture, maybe it was messaging, maybe it was religious messaging, maybe it was patriarchal messaging, whatever it might be that made us think that we don't need to be curious, learn about, and practice becoming amazing lovers it really screwed a lot of us up, right? Because like you said, you bring together two people or more people and you expect to not talk about it and have mind-blowing, time-bending sex. Okay, maybe once in a really blue moon, but for the majority of us, communicating about your needs, wants, and desires, learning about your own pleasure map, what turns you on, what brings you to orgasm, separate from your partner, and then being able to communicate about it. And like you said, Toby, also being able to laugh about it. Like it's awkward as shit. There's body fluids and smells and positioning and all these things. It can be so awkward, let alone trauma that can be involved or family of origin that can, messaging that can be involved or pain or any of the other issues that are present with us between the sheets. And so, just to normalize, if you're out there, you're struggling with sex with your partner, it is very normal. It is totally common. There's no part of you that is broken. Yeah,
100%. I mean, just like in life, it is hard to communicate with just friends, coworkers, all that stuff. Of course, sex isn't going to be just the easiest thing to just talk about and communicate about. So just take your time. Think about it. And also, I'm glad that you kind of busted this myth a little bit because I think a lot of people just think, let's go to Pound Town and then it's going to be great. And then, and that's not even good for the guys because as soon as you start doing penetrative sex, your time limit starts decreasing. You know what I mean? The guy's penis is very sensitive. Yeah. So the faster you get to the penetrative sex, the quicker sex is going to be over anyway. So just take your time and So I appreciate you.
That's a great piece of advice. Taking your time, slowing it down, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Counterintuitive to like, let's just get, and it can get that way. Like, let's just get it done. Like, let's just get to orgasm. But then also to take the pressure off of a lot of you men out there that, I just presented to you the research that shows that 75% of women are not going to orgasm consistently or ever from penetration alone. And hopefully that kind of takes the pressure off of everyone, right? Let's figure it out. There is a major difference. We call it the pleasure gap in my world of sex coaching, but between the men's anatomy of arousal and women's anatomy of arousal. And I'm sure we'll do some more podcasts on that. So.
Oh, yeah. And you're exactly right. That even helps with men because a lot of times men feel inadequate with their penis size and they think, oh, no, we're doing penetrative sex and it's not turning her on or leading her to orgasm. And oftentimes you're missing the thing that's right there on the front that, you know, and I mean, it goes way longer, and you can do, like you said, you can use all kinds of appendages to stimulate that. So
Exactly.
yeah.
We do not just have one vulva or one penis. We have hands, we have mouths, we have tongues, we have toys. We have so many things that we can do to really bridge that pleasure gap and to increase the pleasure that both people in a partnership are experiencing.
Yeah, 100%. All right, you want to get to some listener questions?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So we, like we said, we are getting amazing listener questions. And if you have a question that you want to send in to Dr. Stormy and I, then you can send it to Toby at marriagesupply.com, or Stormy, give them your email. They can send it to you as well.
Yeah, you can send it to me at Stormy. So that's STORMY at lovedeeplab.com. So lovedeeplab.com.
All right. This first one's a two-parter. We'll break them up into two different questions here. This comes from clitoris. Been married 11 years, and we still both suck at talking dirty. Any advice for improving in this area? And I want to start with, it always is a little weird for me. It's been weird for me to talk dirty to any the people that I've dated or married because you're hanging out, watching Netflix, or fixing dinner for the kids. You're doing all this stuff, and then you got to go in there and go, suck my fuck. You know, you think you got to be either tough or strong or manly, or, you know, yeah, put that over here and stick it in that. And oh my God, you do all that, and then all of a sudden you're laughing, or, you know, your partner's laughing, spouse is laughing, girlfriend's laughing. You're like, oh, I've totally blown it. So yeah, this one, I do think it's difficult sometimes because you want to be cool and sexy, but sometimes you say just, you know, hey, you know, you like that wiener, and you're like, oh, that sounds horrible. Like, it didn't even, I don't even like that.
She starts thinking about like Oscar Mayer wiener song, and it just
you know what I read today? You got a humongous clitoris. That just doesn't land. It doesn't land. So yeah. So what's the?
I love that intro, because what I would say is it's not always going to land. So I love this question. Thank you for writing this in. But talking dirty is a skill. It's a practice, right? So we don't typically just nail it the first time. No pun intended, right?
Right.
It's like to, you know, but it is like, and I'm a total research nerd, but the research does suggest that the more you can communicate with your partner during sex, including dirty talk or pillow talk, will increase your pleasure. So it's a great thing for everyone listening, like to lean into and you know, and explore. It also makes sex more sensory, right? So if we're bringing in auditory, we're bringing in a whole nother sensory system, which makes for better sex, makes for deeper orgasms and better orgasms. So that's kind of the nerdy part of it. But then as far as like practical, our senses is a great place to start. So you don't have to like go with full on porn level, like dirty talk or, you know, kink dominatrix talk. It can be, keep it simple. And so you can start with things like, also good idea to like maybe start, if it's new to you, like start over text, because it feels a little bit safer.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like,
yeah.
So you can start over text and then be like, hey babe, what do you think about that text I sent you? And, you know, see what the feedback is on that. And then also using our senses, because people are like, I get asked by my clients, like, I don't know what to say. You know, it's like, well, you think about it before you're going to say it. Like, be like, what would I say to her or him, and, you know, or them in this situation? And it could be, if you think about the senses, it could be, right? Look, what you're seeing, what you're smelling, what you're tasting, what you're touching. So if you think of your senses, it gives you a lot of fodder for the pillow talk, for the dirty talk. And it doesn't have to be triple X rated. Like, it can be sexy as shit and be very PG-13, you know? So you can, if you just know that you can keep it simple and start easy, that, you know, you don't have to have this like monologue that's like, you know, erotica level, you know, dirty talk. So those are a few tips, and I just took some notes here too. Oh, also doing a lot more encouragement. So for all your parents out there, right? We think with our kids, we do 6 to 1, 6 positive affirmations for 1 like negative feedback. It's a similar thing for sure with pillow talk. So rather than saying, don't do this, or I don't like this, right? That might be true. You're asking them not to, and you don't like something. It's just about framing it in the positive. So like, I love it when you do this, or do more of this. You know, and then and that's the verbal. So keeping it really positive and affirmation, and then also telling and showing are great ways to kind of get into like the dirty talk, the pillow talk.
I like that. Yeah. So you're saying it's totally fine. Like when you're talking about dirty talk, it might be fine just to start out with, oh my gosh, you're beautiful, or oh wow,
Totally.
Wow, this feels so good, or you feel so good. Like start just kind.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And think about, again, back to your senses, or like, wow, you look amazing in that position, right? Like, like I love the look of your boobs in that position or whatever, like, right? Because you're talking about what you're seeing. You can talk about what you're hearing. Like, I love the sound of your breath when you're turned on. Like, I love your grunts, whatever. It could be anything, right? So sticking with the senses, if you don't know what to say, is a good place to start.
And then for the men out there, the ladies like it when we sometimes I felt like, is my moaning sound like weak or not matched? Like I'm, ooh, or, I don't want to sound. I want to, but then if I try to sound too mashed, it's like, oh yeah. It's hard to navigate like what sounds manly and doesn't, like sound like you might be having a heart attack, or you sound like it, you're wimpy or something.
Okay, so a couple of things that come up, and this is the nerdy part of me coming up with like this with the sensory part, but our auditory. So our brain they say is our greatest sex organ. I say that is true, but it is also our greatest barrier to fabulous sex. So again, you're feeding the auditory component to the brain with dirty talk, right? But it's a great question because we tend to be pretty nasally, high up in our head, high up in our tone or our pitch, when we're like not so sure. We're like toying the waters, we're testing the waters. This is men or women. And so to your point of like you think it sounds like high pitched, and then you drop it down too low and it sounds like you're like trying to primal it out or whatever. So playing with tone and pitch is one of the things that I have my clients do when they're practicing pillow talk, dirty talk. But also the most important thing is being authentic, right? If you're trying it out, like, it's fine if you want to try it on, but your sounds are your sounds. They are going to be sexy to your partner. And if they're not, that's okay. They're still your sounds. So never squelching your sounds. But what's interesting is culturally, we are very, and this isn't just women, but it's a little bit more intense for the women that I work with. It's very like, oh, give it to me, baby. Like, if anything, right? It's very like scripted. It's very words. So pillow talk does not have to be words. It can be just sounds. So practicing your voice, exercising your voice is a really beautiful way, not to sound too woo-woo, but I am totally woo-woo, is to like speak your truth, right? To really show, how does your pleasure sound? What sounds do you make when you're really turned on? Because whatever you make is perfect and it's beautiful and it's super sexy.
Yeah. And I would add to that, definitely experiment a little bit. There's been times where me or our partner said something that we wouldn't normally, and it did turn us on. You know what I mean? Like we said something that I said something I didn't think. I was like, I don't want to say that, but I said it, and then it kind of turned me on a little bit, or my partner on a little bit. So don't just be negative and go, I would never say that, because it might be something that could possibly lead to turning you on.
Totally. That's a great thing. You open the door. Maybe you say something that's like a little edgy and your partner's like, ooh, do more of that. And you're like, oh, okay. That's all, like, right. But also, like you mentioned earlier, to being willing to like laugh. Like, it is not always going to land. It is not always going to be perfect. But if you can be like, oh, that was so awkward, and laugh about it.
Right.
Well, now you're laughing about it. Right. And maybe you tweak it the next time, or that's not your turn on. Right. Because not everything you say is going to turn on you. It's going to land in the way you want it to for your partner. But that's part of the growth.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's get to Clee's second question. Along similar lines, what is the best approach to communicating about trying new things, experiences, toys, etc., in the bedroom in a way that's respectful but still honest and vulnerable? Oh my gosh, that is a juicy question, and we have a juicy answer, but you're going to have to hop over to the Sex 101 podcast feed to hear that answer, and a few more as well. We're trying to get all of our listeners to move over to our main feed and our main spot. So if you wouldn't mind going over there, the link is in the bio, so go check it out.